Hi, and welcome to this tutorial on how to create what I am calling a turbo photo slideshow. And essentially what this is a solution I came up with to the age-old problem of you come back from vacation, you have 2,000 photos, you are dying to show your friends, but you need to kind of edit it down so that so it's not a super boring slideshow. And so one time I didn't have time to do that, so I said, well, what am I going to do? So I came up with these scripts that I wrote that allowed me to quickly sequence every single photo I took without having to do any editing, and then set it to music so it would be interesting to watch. And the reason I got that idea actually is because if you've ever used iPhoto, when you import your photos into iPhoto, it kind of quickly cycles through them. And I was listening to music as I was doing that, and I thought, oh man, that looks really cool. I should try and figure out a way to automate that. So I did in After Effects, and what I'm going to show you guys in this tutorial is how to do that for your photos very quickly and easily with the aid of using these scripts that I wrote for After Effects. So let's take a look at this. This is an example that I just put together for this demo. So it might not look like much, but actually doing this by hand, especially when you're talking about 2,000 photos, would be a amount of work. So I'm going to just show you how to kind of quickly automate this whole process. So let's start by taking all your photos that are probably going to be in the Finder. I'm going to do a select all here. I'm going to create a new folder here called Photos. And you can literally drag and drop. So from the Finder, I'm just going to drag photos here into the Photos folder. So once your photos are already imported, what we're going to do is create a new comp, and we'll do 1280, 720, 25 frames per second, that's fine. And you can literally drag the folder into the comp. And it just takes a minute, and there they are. So there's one little problem I want to point out with dealing with photos in After Effects. If we go back to the Finder, you'll see here, like for example, is It's a photo that's in portrait mode. Photos that are in landscape mode are the other way around. And the way modern cameras do this is they actually store the photo in landscape mode, in other words, rotated, but they write a little tag in a little meta tag in the file that says this photo needs to actually be rotated either 90 degrees clockwise or 90 degrees counterclockwise, depending on how your camera was rotated. I'm going to solo this. As you can see here, in After Effects, it's not rotated properly. To actually go in by hand and figure out which ones are not rotated and rotate them yourself would be a very tedious process. So that's the first script I wrote. I wrote a script that actually rotates these, it basically looks at the meta tag, and if the meta tag says this should be rotated, it then rotates it in After Effects. So I'm just going to select all the layers, and from the File menu, I'm going to choose Scripts. And this script is called Photo Orientation Fixer. And you just run it, and it comes back and it says that it successfully rotated 56 photos. It'll only rotate photos that need to be rotated. So now if we take a look at 1267, you can see that it is actually properly rotated. If we look at the rotation property, all it did was rotate it 90 degrees. So that's really cool. So now the other situation is, so let's keep this on solo. So normally, if I wanted to actually have all of these images scaled to fit to the height of the comp, you could just select it, and you can go under Layer, Transform, Fit to Comp Height. But look at what happens when I do that. It actually it takes off that rotation, so it kind of breaks my fixer, and you would think, oh well, let's just do that part first and then run the rotation fixer. But if I rotate this 90 degrees, it's not actually going to be fitted properly. So this is why I have another script that can help out here. I'm just going to take this solo off. I'm going to select all of them, and this one is called Fit to Frame, and it gives us the options of letterboxing or cropping. And I personally like to see the entire photo, so we'll choose letterbox. So I'm going to choose yes. And now if we look at 1267, you can see that it's properly scaled and rotated just the way we want it. So that's great. So that's a huge amount of work that we would have had to have done by hand, but these scripts made that really quick and easy. So now that we have all of them properly scaled and rotated, what we're going to do is we're going to, in this comp, and we're going to rename this comp photos. What we're going to do is we're going to make each one of these photos be one frame in the composition. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to select all, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here by hitting the plus on the keyboard. If you do Option or Alt in the right open bracket, so to the right of the P on your keyboard is the left bracket, and then to the right of that is the right bracket. So I'm going to hold down the Option key, and I'm going to hit the right bracket, which is essentially saying, and I'm going to hit plus here to zoom in, it's essentially saying set the out point for this layer at frame 0. Basically it's frame 1. So as you can see here, each one of these photos is only one frame long. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, and notice I deselected, and I'm actually going to select these in the order that I want them to be sequenced. I'm going to select the first one, layer 1, and I'm going to go to the bottom and select the last frame, the last layer. And under animation, I'm going to choose keyframe assistant sequence layers, and basically it gives you this option as to whether you want to overlap. I don't. So I'm going to just hit OK, and if I go to the top here, you can see how it's now sequenced. Each photo now has, it's, you know, one frame long, and they're all one after the other until I get to the very bottom. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select the last layer, and I'm going to hit the letter O to just have to go to the end, and I'm going to just set my out keyframe here, and I'm going to right click and trim comp to work area. So now my comp is the length of all of these photos lasting one frame long. Actually, I want to switch this photo of the chicken here. I don't think this is a very good photo. So one of the cool things about doing this technique is, I believe this is 1266, is because this is actually, you know, each photo is each layer. I can just come in here and choose another photo that I wanted to substitute for it. Let's say this frame, I'm just going to option replace. So there, I could just replace that. I can also do things like, for example, I can make this be here on the right side, and then this one here be on the left side. I could zoom this in if I wanted to, so that you could see the word Barcelona. So you can do sort of whatever you want. And notice how when you have sort of similar photos one after the other, they do kind of cool animations. So going on that tip, I'm actually going to scale this back a little bit. So you can see there, that's kind of cool. All right, so now that I have my comp for the photos, I'm going to go ahead and close this. I'm going to create a new main comp. I'm going to call this main, same settings. And in this main comp, I'm going to bring in my photos. Now if I zoom in here, basically, if I were to play this, each photo lasts one frame. So that's how it is at the default setting. Now I'm going to bring in my song here. This is Ting Tings Be the One. So this is the music I'm going to want to set this to. If you hit LL, the letter L twice quickly, it reveals the waveform. So if we zoom in here, let me make this up. I'm going to trim it up so that it actually starts right where I want it to start here. I'm just going to go back one frame. And again, I'm going to do now option left bracket to set the endpoint. So it actually just trimmed the endpoint to that place. Again, that was option or alt and then left bracket. And I'm going to just slide it over so it starts at the beginning. So now that I have my music set, I'm going to set, because for the purposes of this demo, I'm going to switch this to time here. Let's just do we're going to do about 30 seconds. But you could process the whole entire song. If you're doing it for yourself, you probably want to do that. But for the purposes of the demo, we're just going to do 30 seconds. And selecting the music, you can go, again, animation, keyframe assistant, convert audio to keyframes. And once you do that, you get a new layer called audio amplitude. And if I hit U to see the keyframes, you're going to see here that these values, right, are going to correspond to how tall these peaks are in the music. So if I see here, it goes from 0 and then it gets into 30 here, and then if I go over here where it's really a tall peak, it goes from 1, almost nothing, and then as I go forward it goes 40, and then it goes down to 20. So what I would like to do is have the the photos click on each one of these significant peaks. For that, I'm going to use another one of my scripts. This one's called Audio to Markers. And what Audio to Markers does, it allows you to set a threshold unto which you can actually place markers on this layer. So for example, if I wanted to, in this case, use this example, I could set the threshold to be, you want it to be something less than 43 because that's the top, but more than, say, what's right after it here. So it goes down here, say, to 20. So I want it to be, say, between 20 and 43, because the way the script works is it's going to set a keyframe. So let's say right now we set it at 25. Anytime the audio goes above 25, it puts a marker, but then it doesn't put another marker until the music dips below 25 and then above 25 again. You could write an expression to do that, but it would be a complicated expression, and it would actually also cause you to sort of be a little bit slower because the expression would have to be evaluated every time you do a RAM preview or a render. Whereas with the script, it all happens just the one time, and then there's no processing that needs to happen. A good number for this song seems to be in the low 30s. So I'm going to switch this to 31. I'm going to say mark the audio amplitude layer, and I'm going to head and say do it. So as you can see here, I just quickly set all of these markers. And notice how it only did it up to the end of the work area. It only works within the work area. So now, what I need to do is I need to somehow tell the photo layer to have it switch based on these markers. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to put an expression on the layer, on the time remapping property. So first we have to enable time remapping. So I select the layer and I say enable time remapping. And then I'm going to hold down the option key to set an expression. Now, if you don't care to understand expressions, fast forward at this point, because this is an expression that you can literally copy and paste in. You do not need to understand it, but I'm going to go ahead and explain it briefly for those of you that actually cared to understand. So I'm going to actually grab the expression, and I'm going to go ahead and in here for time remap. All right, and so just so you can see, I'm going to switch to frame mode here. So if you go to the beginning, you're going to see here that we're on frame 0, and then when we get to the first marker, this goes to frame 1, and then it doesn't change again until the second marker, then it goes to frame 2, and so on, right? Frame 3. So quickly, the way this script works is it's saying, take a look at the marker layer, which in this case is the audio amplitude layer, and then take a look at whatever the nearest key is to the current time. This little marker is the current time, which is time. So whatever the nearest key in it is, so in this case here, the nearest key would be this keyframe, but here in this case, the nearest key would be this keyframe. But because we don't want it to actually switch before it actually gets past the keyframe, we set a little conditional that says that if time is greater than or equal to the nearest keyframe, in other words, in this case here, for example, time is less than the nearest keyframe, which is this. But here, time is actually greater than the nearest keyframe. So in this case, this conditional would be true, right? Time is greater than or equal to this nearest keyframe. And in that case, I want the marker counter to be the index, and index is just After Effects always numbers all these markers. So this is index 1, this is index 2, this is index 3, and so on. So if time is past this marker, then just set, I want to make the marker counter be the index of this marker. In this case, it would be 2, so that's why it's setting it 2. But what happens is when it gets past halfway and the nearest marker is actually this one, now the index is 3, but I don't want it to switch to 3 yet. I actually want it to stay, right, to be 2 until it gets to 3. And so in that case, this conditional would be false, right? Time is now less than or equal to the nearest keyframe. So when this is false, it goes into whatever you say else, whatever else. And in this case, I want it to be the index of the nearest keyframe, which in this case is the one in front of it. But I want it to be -1, so I want it to actually keep giving me the value of this other keyframe here, which is 2. So that's why now it stays as 2 until it crosses over here, and then it goes into the next nearest keyframe, and so on. And then the last stage is we're actually using index, which is counting them up as frames, so that's why it makes sense here. But even though its time remap is showing frames here, it internally actually expects to have time, and time is usually more like this. 1.0, it's actually a float number, like 1.2 whatever. And so there's a built-in function in After Effects called convert frames to time. So because the marker counter is in frames, we just need this value to be converted into time for time remap to know what to do with it. And you do that with frames to time. Alright, so that was the quick and dirty of how this expression works. But again, you don't need to worry about understanding this. You can just literally copy and paste it in. Alright, so now we can start previewing this thing. So let me open this up. Oh, and the other thing is you actually want to extend the photo layer so that it actually covers the entire area. So you can see here that it actually is flipping around. So let's go ahead and preview. So that's pretty cool, except for in the beginning here, I want to actually change things a bit. I'm going to close this. I'm going to hit LL again to show the waveform. During this little drum solo, I want there to be a couple more changes. So I'm actually going to just set my work area for this area alone. And instead of using 31 as my audio level, because as you can see here, if we hit U for this, see, these peaks don't actually get into the 30s. They actually are more like in the 25 range. And this one here is like 23. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the threshold to 23. And because I have my work area here, I'm only going to work with this little area. So when I hit do it, I'm going to get a warning saying that there's already markers in here, and do I want to delete these markers or keep them? In this case, I want more hits, so I'm going to just keep them. So I'm going to say no. So there you go. So now it actually set more keyframes, so that when we preview this, you can see here that during this little drum solo, it actually is a little bit more exciting, and it actually flips the photos faster. So you can actually do that either with the script. You can keep massaging things by just selecting areas and running it again at different thresholds, or you can also go in and put in markers by hand. So if I wanted to put a marker here for this little beat, I could either make it with a script, or I could literally just select it and say add marker, and immediately when I add the marker, there's another photo that flips. So you can actually make things more interesting. You can also delete. If you hold down the command key or the control key on PC, you can actually delete a marker that way. And so by adding and deleting markers, you can actually customize when the photos flip if you need to kind of hand massage it. But literally setting this script to 31 actually did a really fantastic job with this script. So the only bit of massaging I wanted to do was here at the beginning. If we did the whole song, there might be other places where I might like it more or less, but the basic gist of it is that. And what's cool is that you can actually use this script to manage all your markers by having them deleted or not deleted. And because it works within the work area, which by the way is one of the bigger revisions from this version of Audio to Markers versus a previous version that I had online, you can actually just work on one section at a time without messing up the work that you had in other places of your script. So that's it. Let's take a last look again. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Till the next one. I'm back here real quick. I was actually chatting with Adam as I was submitting this tutorial to him, and he asked me if you could do this with video as opposed to still images. And I said, absolutely. So let's take a look here at this clip. I have this clip I just shot in Chinatown. It's just basically me walking down the street, right? So the way we can use this is, first we're going to actually we're going to go ahead and add it here, and let's go ahead and pre-comp it, because that way we can control the in and out, because I think it takes a little bit to get going. So let's just slide it back, so just to trim the beginning of it a little bit. Basically all we need to do is take the expression, let's just copy this whole time remap thing. I'm going to turn off the photos. I'm going to paste it onto the video pre-comp, and I'm going to turn off the audio because I'm not going to use the audio. And so let's just take a look real quick. So as you can see, it is kind of working, but it's so subtle in the change because it's continuous video that it doesn't feel as effective. So what we can do is just go in here and modify the expression to just make the changes more severe. So if right now the marker counter changes 1 frame every beat, so here it goes to frame 1, here it goes to frame 2, I just want to say, instead of just moving forward 1 frame, let's say I wanted to have it move forward 10 frames. So if this is 1 and this is the result here, then all I have to do is, inside of the parentheses, before I convert it to time, just multiply times whatever I want. So say if I multiplied it by 10, the first keyframe would be 10, and then the second would be 20, and then 30, and so on. But even that I think is too subtle. I think like multiplying it, say, by like 30 frames might actually produce something exciting. So let's take a look at this. And of course you could either keep doing this, let's go say to 60, or even better, I could actually put a little slider expression on here. So expression controls, slider control, and I'm going to say jump ahead amount, and then say put this to 60. Then I can actually tie this value by just highlighting this number 60. I'm going to pick whip the word slider here. See the actual value slider? So that inserts that. So now this value is being pulled from here. So I could actually, for example, have it start at 60, but then as it goes, so here's a keyframe. So let's say we start at 60, and then after this frame we go down, I don't know, then here we go to 30. See how that looks. It actually goes in reverse because these numbers are being multiplied, so it actually is kind of like a cool effect. But anyway, you can just play around with that. That's totally bonus material. Let's do what you can do. So that's how you could use it with video. Let's just leave it at 60. That's it. Kind of cool. All right. Hope you guys enjoy it.